Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Suspect charged in murder of St. Anne Police Constable Ricardo Fairclough. Political analyst lists corruption as a major hindrance in Jamaica's political process. And later in sports, West Indies player banned for 5 years under ICC corruption code. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. We begin with a TVJ News follow-up. The suspect held in connection with the murder of a St. Anne-based policeman has been charged. He is 29-year-old O'Shane Davis, otherwise called Sean Brown, or Katoni of Oyster Spring, Trelawney. He's been charged with murder, shooting with intent, possession of a prohibited weapon, and unauthorized possession of ammunition. The police say Mr. Davis, who was wounded during the incident, confessed to the crime and gave a statement. It's understood that Davis was transported by 2 other men to carry out a hit on a female vendor. Whilst making his escape, he was confronted by Constable Ricardo Fairclough and a gun battle ensued. Constable Fairclough was shot in the chest. The vendor was also shot and injured. Commanding officer for the St. James Police Division, Superintendent Aaron Samuels, says the police will be working closely with garage operators in the Montego Bay Police Division. His comments come amid concerns of the lack of order in sections of the parish.
When you have a lot of these vehicles around on the roadway, when we want to respond to an emergency, it creates a hazard. When persons want to move around, especially around your area there, there's a school there, and at times the traffic is so heavy. And when you look at what causes the traffic blockage, are a lot of the vehicles that are being worked on or should be worked on placed in the roadways.
While admitting there is no intention to put the operators out of business, Superintendent Samuel says as a city there must be structure. Help is now being sought to assist the operators with regularizing their business.
But we can't put you on that if you're not compliant with all of the regulations, whether it be health, whether it be the municipal corporation, whether it be NEPA. But we have to have everybody on the same page, ensuring that order is maintained.
The opposition believes that the tightening of monetary policy is one of the major contributing factors to the government not meeting its desired revenue target at the end of the 2023-24 financial year. According to the Finance Ministry, that figure stood at $24.8 billion. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says the main contributor was a shortfall in corporate tax, which was lower at $14.3 billion, and also the changes to the IFRS model, which impacted a number of financial institutions. But for opposition spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, those are just part of a bigger problem.
I think that may be a partial explanation, but I don't think it can fully explain the decline that we have seen. I think IFRS could be a contributor, but you're also seeing a lowering of profits generally. And I believe the elevation of interest rates over the last 12 to 18 months is having an impact on corporate profits and the ability of companies to pass those costs on to the end customer. So yes, I think it's a partial explanation, but I don't think it fully explains it. I think 1 month is obviously not enough data to determine if it's a trend, but if you also look at economic growth over the last number of quarters, while it is positive, it has been declining. And I think the tightening in the monetary policy is having a general impact on the economy. And I think we have to watch it for the next couple of months to see whether the level of revenue that the government anticipates actually comes in.
Mr. Robinson says that the government, in the meantime, needs to curtail their expenditure budget to fit the realities of the country's economic climate.
Because you can't overspend what you're not bringing in. Now, obviously, as I said, I'll acknowledge that you may need a little more time to determine whether this is just a one-off thing or whether there's a trend. My own view is that I believe there may be a trend based on the tightening in the economy for monetary policy, and profits for corporations are generally coming down. Now, we saw consumption remaining buoyant. So again, let's watch and see how the next month or so goes in terms of the inflows to come to more definitive conclusions. But the government has to adjust if you're not getting the revenues you project.
We go to reactions now to the recent PNP Commission Don Anderson poll. It shows the opposition leading the incumbent by a sizable margin. Speaking on Smile Jamaica, political commentator Jermaine Barrett highlighted some of the key factors. Details in this report. Corruption continues to be a major factor which has led to voter apathy. That's according to political analyst Jermaine Barrett. His comment comes on the heels of the latest PNP commissioned Don Anderson poll, which shows that the opposition has a better chance of winning the elections if one was to be called now. Speaking on TVJ's Smile Jamaica on Thursday, Mr. Barrett noted that due to the high levels of corruption, voters, especially youth, continue to stay away from the political process. And again, social media usage among the political parties is limited.
It is a generation of, persons who are just not willing to make that added effort to go out and to engage in a physical sense. But it's easy for you to grab your device, swipe, read, and ultimately, tweet. That's the generation in which we live. And I think it's a struggle for both political parties, actually, to engage that audience sufficiently to inspire them and to encourage them to make that step, to make that sacrifice even to go to the polls and to vote.
He further added that citizens' attitude towards politics have changed from decades ago.
Jamaicans are demanding more of their political leaders. We live in a globalized context, in a globalized village. Our neighbors to the north, we're peering in on them all the time and seeing how it is that, their citizens are gaining a lot more and we're not gaining as much. We're still struggling in terms of infrastructure and education and crime and all of these things. And even though more developed countries have their difficulties, economically they're doing better off. And it's a sense that we're jealous of the good life.
Mr. Barrett says this latest poll should put a fire under the current administration.
I think that they are frightened now at what the indications are pointing to. I hope that the sentiment that I'm getting, for example, from Everett Warmington and to a lesser extent the information minister, are not indicative of what the position is of the party, which is to say, well, these polls are not really credible. This is not a credible indication as to people's voting preferences. And I think that they should really take stock and take reality or take cognizance of what the trends are and really, really rev up the messaging and promote more the activities of the government and do a lot more contrasting.
And Information Minister Robert Morgan says work is being done to improve how the government communicates with the public. Speaking at Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing, Mr. Morgan contends that the government's achievements are being undermined by poor communication. But they are working with the various agencies and statutory bodies to fix the problem.
The idea is that communication should not be for the benefit of the government. Communications is actually for the benefit of the public. And if people are unaware of what their tax dollars is doing, then it makes your job as a functionary in government pretty much irrelevant, as people will no longer have a vested interest in not just politicians, but public servants, heads of entities continuing to function, and it undermines our democratic process.
He further noted how communication is being democratized.
There are many portals through which people get information. When we were children, we had RJR and we had JVC.
That's it.
Now we have radio, TV, social media, WhatsApp, and so forth. And I think what that has done, it is forcing not just governments in Jamaica, but governments globally, as well as entities and statutory bodies and private sector companies, to really diversify how they communicate with the public. That needs to be escalated, that needs to be sped up to reach people where they consume their information.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News. Stay with us, more stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. The Health Ministry is reporting a scaling down of activities at the Jamaica Cuba Eye Program Clinic at St. Joseph's Hospital in St. Andrew. In a release, the ministry says this will take place today, May 2, and Friday, May 3. During this time, only pre-operative and post-operative patients will be seen. The doctors will resume seeing first-time patients on Monday, May 6. The minister says this temporary adjustment is necessary to ensure that pre-operative and post-operative patients receive the necessary care and attention during this period. Patients who have scheduled appointments for these dates are advised to contact the clinic to reschedule their appointments or seek guidance on alternative arrangements. Ask for help. That advice for farmers suffering losses to livestock and crops. Experts say while many farmers feel their issues are a mystery, most of the problems are actually linked to the continuous heat and can be addressed by technical experts. Karen Simpson reports.
Images of heartbreak for some farmers who spent months cultivating their sweet potato crop. The produce were damaged by pests. Some of the farmers said they lost entire crops due for reaping this year. The advice to them from technical experts: protect your fields with proven insecticides.
Now, when it comes down to, farmers experiencing the drought and what's out there, what comes to mind right away is the insect infestation. As insect tends to really infect, and they're there. It's actually the farmers, us, really go into the habitats of these farmers, of these insects, and as we prepare our plots, we're also invading the insect space, and they're always going to know where they go afterwards. They're going to go straight to the plants. So by applying this product at the root zone of the sweet potato right before the fruit start to come out, then you get rid of those bugs, those shine looking black bugs that really lay those eggs, and then from there it will just eradicate them completely.
But it's not only potato farmers who have had a tough time this year. One poultry farmer explained she has been racking up losses.
Now, what good pan last year, chicken they get 4 years start dead. You had 3 a day, 4 a day, to take what to come to me boss and still not They buy 80 chicken, I get 35 to 80 chicken, 35 to 80 chicken, I get the other day. 35 to 80 chicken.
That's a big loss.
Yeah. I tell me company buy from and chicken back now.
Experts from feed providers Nutrimix warned animal farmers to seek professional help, especially during this dry period, as the heat is having a detrimental impact on the health of animals.
It doesn't matter the size operation that you have, we will be there to assist once you request us. So I've even have cases where someone reached out to me, they had some issues, and when I went to check it out, there were just like 3 layers. So the number that you have, it really doesn't matter to us. The greatest thing is that you're a farmer, and once you're a farmer, regardless of what you do, you support the company, you support the brand, whatever it is, and we can assist, we will be there to assist.
The stakeholders were speaking at a Farmers Month workshop in Clarendon.
Individuals that are helping us to realize food security, the backbone of our nation. And as you know, a nation that is able to feed itself is a strong one.
One appeal from the farmers this Farmers Month is for additional land to be made available for them to lease.
If I even 2 acre land to plant a melon, the land do well in Clarendon now, and so.
Karen Simpson, TVJ News.
And it's now time for the Business Minute. The Statistical Institute of Jamaica Statin says Jamaican commuters and motorists faced a double-digit increase in transportation costs. The average cost of goods and services related to the transport division went up by 10% from March 2023 to March 2024. Looking at the month of March, there was a 0.2% average increase in the index for the transport division. This was propelled predominantly by a 0.7% uptick in costs associated with the operation of personal transport equipment. Higher petrol prices were linked to the increase in that group. Further afield, the UK economy will see the slowest growth of the largest developed nations next year, according to forecasts. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, predicted that UK gross domestic product, GDP, a key measure of economic health, will rise by 1% in 2025. This is below the rest of the G7 nations, which include Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the US. The UK economy is now forecast to expand by 0.4% this year, a downgrade from the OECD's previous projection for 0.7% growth. And that's it for the Business Minute. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
in the region. The UK has pledged millions of dollars to improve radar surveillance around the Cayman Islands as part of a package of measures to disrupt drug and gun trafficking. The Cayman Islands government says alongside firearms smuggling, it has been determined that transnational narcotics trafficking is one of the most damaging forms of organized crime across the Caribbean and is linked to corruption and high rates of serious violence and homicide. On the international scene, Colombian President Gustavo Petro says he will break diplomatic relations with Israel over its actions in Gaza. Petro has already heavily criticized Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and had asked to join South Africa's case accusing Israel of genocide at the International Court of Justice. The Colombian president says other nations cannot be silent in the face of what's transpiring in Gaza. Bolivia broke relations with Israel at the end of October last year, while several other countries in Latin America, including Colombia, Chile, and Honduras, have recalled their ambassadors. And the death toll from a collapsed highway in southeastern China climbed to 48 on Thursday as searchers dug for a second day through a treacherous and mountainous area. One side of the four-lane highway in the city gave way after a month of heavy rains in the Guangdong province. 30 people are now in hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Amoy Harriet.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Spencer Darlington will have your midday sports report.